Welcome back, family. Welcome back. Welcome back to Parent Power Hour. It is another Monday. It is 5:07. I'm running a little bit late, family. Hope you can just excuse me for a moment here, please. We are welcomed with esteemed guests. We have some newcomers to the show. We have some friends of the show. Miss Peters is back in the house. So good to have her back. And I just have a feeling that today's show will be full of nuggets of wisdom from our esteemed guests. Do not adjust your screen. Our brother Tyrone is still a little bit under the weather. Actually, I heard he's doing well, but he said he was a little rough. You know how dapper our brother Tyrone is, and so we await his return. So you can tune in on Thursday at Tyrone's house. I'm sure he will be back at that point. But today, family, we are going to talk about curriculum. What is it all about? What is the purpose? Is it necessary? And we have the right folks here to help us glean into some insight of just how important curriculum is or isn't. But before we begin, as always, we are going to connect. So if you are watching us through one of our platforms, the question goes for you as well. That question is, I think to my panel, I'm going to amend my question just a little bit. So I'm going to amend it and qualify with saying, in COVID times, okay, in COVID times, what is or has been your favorite way to get exercise? We're going to start with ladies first, and we're going to start with our return friend to the show, Miss Tamika Peters. Let us know, what's your favorite way?
I love I love dancing. I actually line dance with a group locally. So anytime I need to exercise or just relax or decompress, I dance.
Okay, Miss Peters. So wait a minute now. I'm a little slow, Miss Peters, sometimes. So y'all get on Zoom and y'all have a Zoom line dance right now?
Sometimes, or I just put on music and dance like no one's watching because no one really is. But I love to dance. Anytime a good song come on from home, I just before I start watching TV or just becoming a couch potato, as a lot of us have been because of COVID times and not being able to do our regular thing. I put on a song, and depending on the mood I am, it can go from Meg Thee Stallion to Steve Wonder. I don't know, depending what mood I'm in, and I just take those couple minutes just to dance and unwind.
All right. Thank you, Miss Peters. Miss Carey, Kasey Carey was an educator. What about you? Favorite way to exercise during COVID times?
Sure. Good evening, everyone. I'm sure, like many people out there, I have a little baby at home, and so my main form of exercise has been chasing that guy around. But we've been going for many walks. So that pushing that stroller up the hills, that's all me all day with the podcast.
Excellent. Thank you for that. Thank you for that. And joining us also today, first time to the program, Mr. Tavon Lawrence. And family, we're going to get into exactly where they teach or what exactly they do as educators. And Mr. Lawrence is a leader as well, educator leader. How about you, sir? Favorite way to exercise during COVID times?
You know, when you asked this question, I was like, how am I going to answer this question? Because Lord knows I've been exercising this hand, eating from that plate. But I'm with Kasey. I have 2 young kids at home. And in this day of COVID, where we're trying to just keep safe, like it might be chasing the kids around the house or around the backyard, and really just like trying to keep them engaged.
All right, beautiful. Thank you all for participating and sharing. And for me, I think COVID has really caused me, I was an outdoor person anyway, but I think more than ever this last year, I have done a lot of bike riding. And it has just been absolutely fun, absolutely phenomenal. And as you all know, they've really opened up the city, Baltimore City, to bike riders. With the lanes and the different structures that they have throughout the city. So thank you all very much. Family, please put it in the chat. I think our esteemed producer, Rebecca, will add your voice to the queue. And any questions and comments, please, as always, they are welcome. Also, please share the show. Let everyone know that we are happening right now. Okay, folks, so curriculum. The great thing about our show is that we seem to always engender the hot button topic in education. We're blessed that way. We have a lot of people that watch, support, and you know, even Rebecca and Tyrone and myself, we end up having our production meeting and we're thinking about all of these things. And I think now, during this particular time in our history, many things are under a microscope. And I would say, to even the fuller extent, education is under a microscope in this country. So that brings us to curriculum. So, Ms. Peters, I would like you first to introduce yourself, and then do we need curriculum? What are your thoughts on that? And we're gonna go around the table from there.
Hi, I'm Peters. I'm a third grade teacher in Baltimore City, Liberty Elementary School. Curriculum. Do we need it? In my personal opinion, the way that it's written, no. I don't feel like we need it. I do feel like, of course, we have standards, we have guidelines that we need to follow. We have certain skills and strategies that we want to teach our students. But when I think of curriculum, especially in the one that we have, I feel like it does not encompass enough for all students. The authors are not diverse. The stories are not diverse. The structures are not diverse. So curriculum as is, no, I don't think we need it.
Thank you, Ms. Peters. Nuggets already, y'all. I think, Rebecca, I don't know, this might be the earliest nuggets of wisdom we've had within the first moments of Ms. Peters speaking. Ms. Carey, you're also a teacher, educator. Can you introduce yourself? Let us know a little bit about you.
Sure. I'm a fifth grade teacher at Hampden Elementary School. This is actually my first year being back to the city. I taught at the city previously, and then I was in Baltimore County for a few years, and now I'm back to the city. And I'm gonna respectfully disagree with Ms. Peters. I think that curriculum is it's necessary for us to do our jobs the best that we can. I think that being a teacher, that's a humongous thing that we're taking on. And then writing a curriculum simultaneously, that's a job in and of itself. And I have written curriculum before, and it's just so involved to make sure that we're digging as deep as we possibly can in order to meet those standards and challenge our students appropriately. That being said, I will agree with Ms. Peters about the fact that sometimes our students are not always reflected within that curriculum. And that's really important for the students to see themselves in the curriculum in order to take as much as they can away from it. So for example, right now we're learning about the Indigenous peoples in the fifth grade Wit and Wisdom curriculum. And interestingly enough, my students, my African-American students were like, well, where do I fit in this timeline? And so we actually were able to dig deeper. Right now, I have the flexibility to be able to do that with my students. And we kind of created a timeline where we saw that just as the Native Americans' rights were being taken away, African Americans' rights were becoming more and more free. And so that was interesting to see how those two things lined up together. So curriculum, I think, it can be really, really beneficial, but I think that we do need to be mindful of the fact that our students need to be reflected within that curriculum.
All right, thank you, Ms. Carey there. Ms. Lawrence, you have a unique position, site director, BCTR, but that doesn't mean a lot to a lot of folks. Can you explain the importance of your position, sir? And then also, please give us your thoughts on the question.
Absolutely. Thank you, William. I'm the site director for the Baltimore City Teaching Residency. We're an alternative certification program in the state of Maryland, but specifically, we provide training and coaching to teachers who go directly into Baltimore City public schools. Our teachers come from a wide range of backgrounds, most of them career changers, or like Ms. Peters, they were already in a career and seeking certification. Ms. Peters is one of our wonderful BCTR teachers and very proud of the work that she has done. prior to my role, I did teach in Baltimore City public schools. And so I'll bring a little bit of perspective from both sides. As I was listening to both Ms. Peters and Ms. Carey, I was like, I'm gonna fit right dead in the center here. Because the reality is, like, there has to be a qualifier, right? I can say, like, yes, curriculum is needed, and here's why. My organization did a study where they looked over at 20,000 student assignments, and they found out for students of color, only 56% of the time were those assignments on grade level. They also found that about 38% of students were never given, students of color were never given an opportunity to do grade level work. And so when we look at that and we look at that data, we say, like, there has to be a curriculum, right? Because what they found is that in a lot of times where students weren't given that access to that grade level work, it was because the teacher was creating a curriculum and pulling things off of Pinterest and Google, and never really looking at whether it was grade level or not, and never really looking at the standards. Now, on the flip side of that, like, we need that curriculum because we haven't invested enough into teacher training. When I came through and when I started teaching, there was this gap. There's this gap in teacher training where our teachers don't have enough deep content knowledge and enough knowledge around the standards and to go on their own and build a curriculum or build lessons that dig deep enough, like Ms. Carey said. So I think it's a little bit of both. And then to this, this comment about our students being reflected in a curriculum, this idea of windows and mirrors. I think even where we have curriculum, like in Baltimore City, there's this push to teach to the fidelity of the curriculum. And even as a large district like Baltimore City, we have to be critical consumers of the curriculum, which means that we have to look at the curriculum and be able to make changes to it to make sure that we are reflecting our students and to make sure our students are getting what they need.
Thank you, Mr. Lawrence. I have a follow-up because I had the very same experience 20 years ago when I came in, and I was trained in political science and legal theory, but I felt called to teach. When I got there was nothing to teach for social studies. It was literally the textbook, which, as we all know, those tad bits of history about the African-American experience here in this country, Native American experience here in this country, are erroneous, at best, and missing fountains and fountains of historical research and development about those peoples. And there was nothing. I'm right next to you in that middle spot where, yes, we need one, but as Ms. Peter said and Ms. Carey said, it has to be responsible curriculum. And Ms. Carey, you pointed to something that I've long said, is that if we showed all peoples at the same time in history, at the same points, there would be no inferiority or superiority, because all societies have their ebbs and flows of greatness. So thank you all. See, y'all got me go. I'm supposed to stay on. I'm sorry. Okay, we have some beautiful people in the chat. Let's see who is here. Yaja, welcome, Miss Yaja. Nice to meet you last Thursday, Miss Yaja. Mr. Michael Chaney, how are you, sir? Welcome to both of you. Brother Tyrone is in the chat, man. We miss you, my brother. Maybe you can make a cameo. I'm not sure. We miss you though, brother. Io Carmen and Tammy Terrell Street agree with Tamika. Io says it's not culturally relevant. Thank you, Io. Welcome to the show, and thank you for your comment. Also, Patrice Pilgrim Wright is here too. Welcome, Miss Pilgrim Wright. Thank you so much. So, Ms. Carey, I'm going to ask this next question to you. Is it sufficient to work from the benchmarks, to take the benchmarks and create a curriculum from there? Like, is that a good approach? How, what kind of ways should systems and districts, because, to Mr. Lawrence's point, I think we have two issues. We have some teachers that aren't where they need to be, but also if we had a decent curriculum with all the things that are needed, so much pressure wouldn't be on the teacher to create. What are your thoughts on that?
Sure, I agree with you. But by benchmarks, I just want to clarify, what exactly do you mean by benchmarks? Oh, you're on mute.
Sorry, that's a great question. So,
Okay.
when you have standards and then tests about those standards every so often, those
Sure.
assessments that come into play, the students must know this kind of information,
Okay.
and that is a strategy. You don't teach to the test, but you go from the end of the planning backwards. You do backwards planning.
Sure. And so how necessary are those benchmarks in order to when we're aligning with a curriculum? Is that the question? I feel trying to put into words eloquently the way that I feel about assessments, because at some point, assessments, sure, they're absolutely necessary to be able to gauge how our students are performing. And we want to make sure that students are making progress. I think that having meaningful data that will help us that will help inform instructional groups is completely necessary for us. Having data that we don't necessarily do anything with, that we just have an assessment to have an assessment, is not useful in any means. And so I feel a little bit torn about having like an end of unit assessment if you're not going to do anything with that data. And I also think that any sort of assessment should be standard based. So if it is tied to the curriculum, what exactly are you assessing? Are you assessing the content of whatever subject that you were teaching, or are you assessing the standards in which you were teaching that content through? And so I hope I have answered your question.
Yes, you did. And this is, this is Parent Power Hour. You don't have to say it eloquently. You could just say it.
Okay.
We love that. We love that.
I like my job, Mr. Richardson.
Fair point. Fair point. Ms. Peters, I'm going to come to you in one moment with a little bit of a different question. I just want to shout out Ashley Nicole. Even as a parent homeschooling, the resources for accurate history lessons work are extremely limited. We find this here in our city, our fair city, through urban areas throughout the country, as really everywhere. Our country is kind of blanketed with that. And of course, it is by design. Adrian Hubbard agrees. It should also be good quality curriculum. So my question to you, Ms. Peters, because you had some revolutionary out of the box type thinking in terms of curriculum. And I remember from last show, what would if you had a magic wand, if you had all the resources, in the world, I know this is one of those selfish questions as a host that I just get to ask. How would you imagine creating this curriculum?
Well, I've already did it. So my first year teaching after I left BCTR, I had the opportunity to use my master's and create a curriculum. So what I did, the curriculum was called Kids Who Changed the World. And what I loved about it is I took many different sources, many different texts. We used different media points to talk about students or children that changed the world. And what I did, I took the standards that were Common Core standards and knew what, at the time I was teaching fourth grade, what they had to achieve. But what I did, I made my students see them and see other students of all ethnicities, all colors, doing things to change the world. So going to that first question of curriculum, why do I feel like we don't need particular curriculums, because teachers, again, I understand what Mr. Lawrence is saying, and definitely what Ms. Carey is saying, and we need to do better in training our teachers how to do that. But I can't express how my students felt learning from, and I started with the 4 little girls, and I did Emmett Till, and I went to the counter, but then I went to Marley Diaz, who was doing something today. I went to Dr. King's granddaughter, and I found an article on her. And these were articles that were written in People magazine, Essence magazines. So higher level, rigorous material. But our kids got to see that young kids can change the world because they are our future. So if I keep teaching them about the past and don't teach about what's happening now, so they can then get that, this where we go. So for me, curriculum as is written now, why I'm so against it, is because we're not giving our kids that opportunity to see themselves or see people who are doing something in the present that can help them to help with just becoming better citizens in the world. So that's how I spend that. So my magic wand, I've already started swinging it. I'm just hoping eventually I can swing it where everybody, where, like Mr. Lawrence said, teachers don't come in not knowing what to do, because that is the truth. I've been blessed to be mentored by some great educators. And I know every teacher does not have that opportunity. So I can see coming into a school system and not knowing what to do and dropping the ball. I really can. So I can understand having that scripted curriculum for those, but even then it's so much deeper that we need to dig deeper into what are we scripting, what are we saying, what are we exposing our kids. And I did like what Ms. Carey said about taking an opportunity to show her students people that look like them during this timeline. That's powerful within itself. But you were blessed to be able to do that. Some students, some teachers don't get that opportunity.
Mr. Richardson, I'm just going to jump in here really quickly, because I have to sing Miss Peters' praises, right? I've seen her teach. I've been in her classroom. I've seen the magic that happens in her classroom. And that magic that happens in her classroom, like she said, and to my point earlier, just isn't the magic that exists in every classroom. And so that curriculum that Miss Peters talked about building out, and those windows and mirrors, absolutely powerful, right? And if I had a magic wand, or if I could steal Miss Peters' magic wand, it would be taking that magic wand and giving each one of our teachers the skills in order to do that, and then empowering them to then be able to go and do that as well.
Thank you. You actually stole my follow-up, so that's cool, Mr. Lawrence. See, family?
That's my
This is what happens when you have the best, the brightest people that know their way around a classroom, around the understanding of good teaching and pedagogy. So
Can I say something real quick? It's because of Mr. Lawrence that I am where I am today. I cannot let that go remiss. It's because of him. That's a whole nother topic, his belief in me and pushed me to where I am for seeing my passions is why I'm here today. So yes, he knows what he's talking about, parents. Listen.
Beautiful, beautiful. So Mr. Lawrence, let me ask you this. You were an educator, classroom teacher, classroom educator. Now you sit as, again, in a unique position as a site director there at BCTR. Let me ask you, from that journey until now, have you been able to glean why the American education system in large part trusts big companies to develop the curriculum? I know might not be a fair question to ask, but what have you gleaned, or have you any idea?
Yeah. First of all, our educational system is the same place that it was 50, 60, 70 years ago. We're still trying to teach the same way. And so that's a part of the problem. But I really think it comes down to who we are hiring as our experts in these areas, and how our district is looking at developing teachers overall. And I'm not just talking about new teachers. I'm talking about tenured teachers? How are we using those professional development days? Are we actually digging into pedagogy, or are we saying, hey, the district gave us this day, go to your classroom and lesson plan, or put up this bulletin board and things of that nature? And so I think it boils down to the people we hire. And there's this word in the back of my head that I guess I just got to say it. I think it boils down also to like laziness, right? Like we don't want to do the work ourselves, so we're going to try to find some people that we call experts to do that work. The problem is, and Ms. Peters called this out, Ms. Carey also called it out. The problem is these big companies that are doing the work, they don't know our kids. They don't know our kids. They don't know what our kids are going through. They don't know our community. And a lot of times, it goes back to systemic problems where these curriculums are being built for a certain type of kid. And we try to take that curriculum and adapt it for ours. And so like those are a couple of issues I would say.
Thank you, Mr. Lawrence. Ms. Carey, I wanted to ask you, so a teacher gets a curriculum guide for whatever it is they're doing. In your case, like, what is your approach to that? I mean, obviously it's not just, oh, okay, here's my outline, this is this is that. Like, can you give some insight to how you approach using curriculum with some of your students?
Sure. Well, ideally, in school, you would have a professional learning community, a PLC, right? In which you could really kind of look at the scope and sequence of the curriculum. And you kind of hit the nail on the head, Mr. Richardson, and backwards map, right? Where do I want my students to end up at the end of the year or the end of the unit or the end of the quarter? And then work your way backwards. Typically what I do when I am handed, a curriculum, a new curriculum, is weed through it. Where are standards being hit twice? Is it necessary to hit those standards twice? If there is one story or text that lends itself to a certain standard that my students could see themselves in better, that's the one I'm keeping. Goodbye, other text that hits the same exact standard. If we don't need that, why would I provide that to my students? Or alternatively, is there another text that I could substitute that might have a similar, standard or similar idea, right? This is my first year teaching wit and wisdom. So this is a totally brand new experience to me. Boy, it's a hefty, lofty curriculum. I will say that I am enjoying it. And I know that that's maybe not a popular opinion. Ms. Peters, I don't know if you're in this side of my screen if you can't tell, because I'm like, oh, what does Ms. Peters think as she's teaching this? So I enjoy it. I really have been having a great time. And I don't know, maybe this is just our first module, right? And that I'm enjoying this, and I'm thinking my kids are really enjoying this. It's really engaging. So maybe come back to me when we're in module 2 and I might be like, ditch this thing. But right now I'm enjoying it, and I see that my students are really engaged. And also I have to say too, is that students might not always see themselves in a curriculum, and that's okay. They do need to learn about Indigenous peoples. They do need to have some of this other content knowledge that is important, but making it meaningful to them. So at the same time, creating that timeline where they can also see their own history. I feel like pieces of that are missing from certain curriculums where, a larger company, like you were saying, Mr. Lawrence, makes a curriculum for the country, not necessarily for Baltimore, right?
Thank you, Ms. Carey. And yeah, wit and wisdom is taboo around these parts. Now I'm just playing, Ms. Carey. We've heard a lot of complaints about it, but it's good that you're enjoying it. That means hopefully you're facilitating the best parts of it, making it your own. And I'm sure your scholars are enjoying it. Let's see, let's go to the chat before I forget about the good people that are supporting us and chiming in. Ms. Catron, welcome, Ms. Catron. It was great having you last Monday, Ms. Catron. The art of teaching is taking curriculum and ensuring each student gets exactly what they need while also making the lessons relevant. Not all educators will be rigorous and focused without a curriculum. Very fair point. Miss Io Carbon, I didn't like scripted curriculum. I enjoyed the freedom the high school ELA curriculum gave teachers, but some teachers thrive with scripted curriculum, which is also true. Though I have a degree in what I taught, people agree with Mr. Lawrence, and all of you all are receiving lots of love from our listeners. Thank you, family. Thank you, Rebecca, for keeping me up to date. Let's see. Karen Thomas Ginyard, welcome, Karen. I've been teaching wit and wisdom for 3 years for third grade. I like it too. Okay, there you go. You do have to make it right for your kids. And I think that's a fair assessment. Thank you, Miss Ginyard. A fair assessment of all curriculum, of anything that you're handed to. Last one I'll read here, Adrian Hubbard. What I meant when I said we need good curriculum is that the current curriculum is flawed. Yes, we discussed that. For example, some of the wit and wisdom writing prompts have typos, okay, technical flaws, and are written in a confusing way. The current second grade module presupposes background knowledge about Native Americans, geography, history, and settlers, that the students don't have. It's not that I don't have high expectations of the students. This is what I've observed since the wit and wisdom curriculum has been in place. Teachers should have some flexibility with the scope and sequence and assessments to better meet students' needs for both English learners and native speakers. Thank you all so much. If you are just joining us, Tyrone is not up to his normal fly self, so hopefully he will be here on Thursday at Tyrone's house. Please give him some love and wish him well. Tyrone, we know that you are in the chat with us. My brother, thank you so much for doing everything you do to share the podcast. All right, so here we go. Let's talk about wit and wisdom. What's the basic approach in the curriculum? So we'll take it from you, Miss Carey, because you like it. Tell us about it, because it's one thing to hear it, and a lot of parents hear it. And I mean, just to be honest, we have heard a lot more complaints than we have things being wonderful about them. So what is your positive experiences with it? How does it work?
Sure. Well, just full transparency, guys. This is my first year teaching it, and we're virtual, right? So I have not had a truly authentic in the classroom experience with this curriculum, nor have I been trained on it, right? I have the handbook, it's sitting right next to me, and I'm trying to do it to the best of my ability, right? And I know that you're supposed to do it to fidelity. And I think that the reason why you're supposed to be sure to hit all of these different parts of the curriculum is because it builds upon itself. And that is something that I think I really value as a teacher. And as I'm starting to see it come together, like for the end of module tasks, I'm like, oh, this is really interesting the way that they wrote this, or like they had it seems to be cleverly put together. And Ms. Peters, you can disagree with me. The way it's crafted is what I particularly like.
All right, Ms. Peters, what say you? A, and then B, is it culturally relevant, Ms. Peters?
No, it's not culturally relevant. It's not. I'm sorry. I've taught wit and wisdom for the last 3 years that we've had it. I've actually done the 4th grade curriculum and the 3rd grade curriculum. I have to be honest. I like the 3rd grade one. I can't deny. We learn about the sea. Next month, we start learning about space. They do have a unit in the end learning about the arts, and I get to bring in Alvin Alley and Marian Anderson and all of that, so I'm excited for that. 4th grade, I didn't like as much because one book was George versus George. I don't care about George Washington versus King George. I really just don't. But that was my bias. So anyway, it's not culturally relevant. However, I understand what Miss Carey is saying, because when I first got it, it was like overload. Like, this makes no sense. Why am I only touching on this skill when I know they need this skill for future reference? It doesn't come back until 5, 7, 12 lessons later. This is stupid. And that's just me. Now that I know it, I now know a little bit better of what to omit or what to add, what to extend on, or what to minimize on. So it's not horrible, but I've had the opportunity to review other curriculums that I do like a lot better.
All right, thank you. Mr. Lawrence, we're gonna come to you next about Eureka Math, but before that, let me speak about what is in the chat here. Adrian, I'm sorry, I've been saying Adrian, forgive me, Adrian. What I meant, I'm sorry, let me go down a little bit. The current second grade module, no, we talked about that. This is what sorry, I guess I did that already. Sorry, okay. She says module 2 seems to be written on at least a 4th grade level. Comment I think I missed, Ashley Nicole said, I think we could design the system better to aid the teachers in teaching the standard. Better pay, smaller classrooms, more resources, and Ashley Nicole, you get nuggets for all 3 of those. You know, there's no two ways about those things that you point to. Mr. Lawrence, Eureka Math, tell us a little bit about that, the purpose, strengths, weaknesses. And actually before that, so let me ask you this before you answer that, Ms. Lawrence. In your position, do you have to be, I guess, a curriculum specialist and then kind of say to your teachers that you're training, okay, now look, you don't have everything that you think, or you don't have everything that you need. And so here are some strategies to help young teachers along the way.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a part of being a critical consumer, and like we obviously like have to be really careful because we are partners with the district, but we also want our teachers to know what they need to do specifically to reach their students in their classrooms. Like this whole conversation is making me think about a session that one of our coaches just did with our ELA group. And we also had the pleasure of attending a professional development with an author by the name of Natalie Wexler. And she talks about something called the knowledge gap. And the curriculum and wisdom kind of reminds me a little bit of what she talks about. She talks about the fact that our students don't do very well, especially when it comes to these like standardized tests that are supposed to measure student success. The reason why they don't do so well is because there are no opportunities to build the background knowledge that they need in order to be successful. And so that's a lot of what we try to teach our teachers with wit and wisdom. It's like, how can you teach to fidelity, because that's what we're supposed to do, and not add anything, but find workarounds for making sure that we give students the information and the background knowledge necessary for them to actually access the material. So whether that is working with your social studies department and your social studies teacher and saying that, look, in this unit, we're covering X, Y, and Z. My kids don't have the background knowledge. Can we partner and you actually build some lessons around that? Because as you mentioned, Mr. Richardson, and I think you said it was, I don't want to get the number wrong, 20 years ago or some odd years ago, there was no curriculum or a weak curriculum. That still holds true. We're digging really deep with reading. We're digging really deep with math, but when it comes to science and social studies, that's a problem. And my kids are in county schools, and I'm listening to their teachers say, "Well, the principal said that we have to teach social studies, so we're going to add a lesson in here," and it's not really a part of what they're actually doing. So yeah, you got to be a critical consumer. You've got to find ways around that curriculum, because we all know at the end of the day that curriculum is good. Our kids, I would say, are doing better versus when like teachers were just building lessons out of the wazoo or pulling Pinterest lessons. So it is serving a purpose, but we all know that it's not doing what it needs to do. And we've got to be those critical consumers and help our students access that material. And that starts really by modifying the material. I hope that answered your question. I went off on a little bit of a tangent there.
No, that's it. We're here for the tangents, and they always are insightful for us. So thank you all very much, for just expressing your passion and your expertise. Ms. Yaja, the problem with scripted curriculum is that it does not have fail-safe to account for existing deficits in certain scholars. For instance, one of my daughters, a pre-K teacher, now has to tutor second and third graders. She needs to teach them letter blends and diphthongs. The problem is 3 of them don't know letter sounds. The scripted curriculum is not helping, yet my daughter has to get those same students from 0 to 60% on the assessments. Thank you, Ms. Yaja, always timely. Ms. Peters, what about this Eureka Math? Do you teach it now?
I taught it 2 years ago for 4th grade. So in our new way of teaching, I co-teach with my math. So I do all ELA, science, social studies, but I do co-teach. So I do help her with the 3rd grade curriculum in math as well.
Okay. What do you think? Is that it? A tee-hee? That's all we get, Ms. Peters?
Math is, to me, a lot different because math is, in my mind, a lot universal. So I know parents a lot. I hear parents a lot talk about this new math, and it's too long. It's too many steps to it. It's too much. I haven't taught 4th grade, and haven't been a person, and Tavon could attest to this, who did not have the best math background in life at all growing up. I understand it. I understand a lot of concepts a lot better now through Eureka, through the new Common Core standards. Let me say it that way better. So yes, it seems like it's extra steps. Yes, it seems like that, but we all have different minds when it comes to math. Some people can do the algorithms like that. People like me, I need the picture. I need you to break it down and show me, and it might take me 20 steps. But if I get to the answer that you got to in 1 step, I still got the answer. Eureka, I didn't despise Eureka. I liked it enough because they gave you multiples of enough. So again, just like Wit and Wisdom, but this one was a little bit easier to streamline. You could take away what you need. Problem is, again, with scripted curriculum, though, it bases on what they think the students already know. So you become like, you're teaching this new skill, and it's a 4th grade skill, and there's no background, there's no foundation, or the kids might have forgot. Like, so you go right in and take this pre-assessment and do this, and they're failing, not realizing if I had taken 2 days prior just to refresh them or show them these other steps from other standards lower, then when it's time to come to this one, more students would be able to do it. That's a big issue I have on both scripted curriculum. It's like they say, here it is. This is where you need to start. That's it. And when you decide to add more or take away or step back, now you're not on pacing. Now you're not following the standards. And this is where curriculums, for me, become an issue because we're not servicing our kids. I'm not saying don't follow the guideline. I'm not saying don't use it eventually, but same thing with Eureka. It goes right into the 4th grade standards. If there is no room, unless you put it in yourself, unless you're a teacher comfortable enough to say, I'm going to push back and do this because I know my students need this, you don't have that part of it.
Thank you, Ms. Peters. Ms. Carey, what are your thoughts about Eureka?
I have no thoughts on Eureka because I'm not experienced. I feel like I'm just like a newbie here. So no thoughts on that. But I will agree with Ms. Peters in that, I mean, that's part of the craft of teaching, right? Otherwise, we would just have a robot up in front of the students delivering information. I mean, we have to know who our students are, where they might have gaps in their learning, and then we have to have the flexibility in order to manipulate the lesson in order to meet those needs of our students and in order to engage them appropriately. And I think that in that way, if you are just blindly following a curriculum to fidelity, then you will run into problems because our children are children. They're not just these puppets that are sitting in front of us. So I will absolutely, Ms. Peters, you're totally, here's your nuggets.
Nice, Miss Carey. Thank you. Before we get to our panel with final thoughts, family, I would like to let you know that we're coming up on the end of our show. So if you have final thoughts, please add them to the chat. From Miss Molly Connor, less than 40 books out of 174 texts in Wit and Wisdom are written by writers of color. Only 9% of the texts in Wit and Wisdom are written by Black authors. That's unacceptable for any curriculum, but especially one that aims to be implemented nationwide. What voices are we giving nationwide priority to? There are also a number of units in Wit and Wisdom that embrace colonialism. Wow,
Yes.
thank you.
Oh.
Thank you, Miss Molly Connor. Thank you for your input. I did not know that.
Yes.
Very interesting indeed. Also, Molly Connor adds, what about relevancy like sustainability, community, real history? We need to be exposing our students to texts and units of study that are relevant to life today. This is from Rebecca in her parental role. In first grade, Eureka means 20 ways to do addition. Thanks to Karen Thomas Ginyard, I understand that by third grade, it doesn't matter what strategy you use as long as you get the answer. Therefore, is this really needed if your kids gets the answer with one strategy? That's interesting. Unfortunately, sometimes in first and third grade, they are assessed on the strategy. Wow, I don't like that. First and second. Okay, I'm sorry. First and second grade is what she was talking about, but that they are assessed on the strategy and not the product, I guess, the final product there. And that's very interesting. Thank you, Miss Ginyard, for that. And Rebecca, thank you for your comment as well. Ms. Lawrence, final thoughts here about curriculum. Where do we go forward? And I know you have, I mean, I don't know, I would say the unenviable task of balancing what is and what needs to be with your newbies coming into the system.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot that still needs to be done. I'm gonna step back and actually say that I know that the curriculums that we do have flaws, and there are things that need to be fixed. But what the district has tried to do is they have tried to get material in front of kids that are going to set them up to be globally competitive in the world that we live in today. And there are, we get to work with districts all around the country as a part of TNTP. And as we dig into some assignments that some other school districts are providing to kids, we step back and we're like, whoa, we're actually pretty blessed to have this curriculum to go in front of kids. The thing that we've got to do as we continue to go forward is we've got to be really strong advocates for what we want for our kids. The parents out there, you have to be the voice going in front of the school district. You have got to be the voice going in front of principals in the district, because that's how things change. Unfortunately, the professionals like your teachers, like they can whine and cry and kick all the way to North Avenue. It's not going to be produce the change that we need. We actually need parents. If you are seeing flaws in that curriculum, if you aren't seeing your kids represented in that curriculum, you have to advocate. So like reach out to your teachers. They'll tell you how to advocate. They'll tell you what to do. Absolutely. But you have to be that voice in order to get an educational system, the educational system where we need it. We need advocates on all sides. So please.
Ms. Peters, final thoughts.
I agree with Mr. Lawrence. Like, we are blessed, and just hearing this conversation tonight, like, I am happy to know that even though I, have been blessed to be able to create my own, I don't want my partners. I still work at a school, and just because I'm shining, if everybody else is sinking, we're all sinking. So having the curriculum to help God is a blessing. And now hearing the perspective of other places, and sometimes we forget that we so worry about us, we don't realize that other people are dealing with a lot more extra than we are. So that's a blessing to hear in itself. I would love the districts to allow teachers to, even if we use that, but like for my C unit, allow me, like let teachers know they have that way to bring in books about scientists who are marine biologists who look like the district that you're teaching. Like, you know, if I'm teaching a Hispanic population, let me find some Hispanic authors that so these kids can still learn the content, but see them too. Because I feel like our children would embrace it more and feel more responsible for their learning if they see them and see people who are still relevant today. Like it's good to learn about our past, but what if I could see somebody doing it right now, in this day, doing something that I might inspire to be? That's a big thing. And just like he said about parents, you guys see what your children are doing. You guys are home now, seeing what we're doing. If I complain, and I do a lot of that, you could tell. Oh, she just want to bump the system. But when it comes from you, they hear it a little bit differently. So always advocate. And yes, I will show you how to do that.
Thank you, Ms. Peters. Ms. Carey, final thoughts?
Sure. So I think I'm just going to echo a little bit of Mr. Lawrence and Ms. Peters here. Having a comprehensive curriculum is, in my opinion, absolutely necessary for students to be globally competitive, in order to be able to build upon skills that they have and are learning and are acquiring along the way. That creating a curriculum is a full-time job, and being a teacher is a full-time job. And doing those things simultaneously doing both those things simultaneously well is virtually impossible. And so in my opinion, absolutely, we definitely need a curriculum. However, as Ms. Peters said, having the flexibility to pull in our own resources. You know, Ms. Peters, I know because I was speaking to a third grade teacher in my school, that you're learning about the ocean, and having that flexibility where students could see themselves in that role. It just makes sense. Why not make it relevant to them? Why not engage them in that way? And I mean, if that's what you want to do, if you want your students to learn, why not pull them in? So thank you. Thank you for having me here tonight also.
Oh, thank you all for joining. And let me get really quickly here, because we're 6 o'clock. It's time for us to close the door. But I want to just lift the voices of those that put some thoughts in the chat here. It's from IO. It says, from a high school ELA perspective, out of 17 novels, plays, books through a high school career, only 4, I guess she's saying only 4 out of the 5 are by Black authors. The curriculum as written are better than the one national curriculum taught, but deficits are still present. Curriculum should reinforce self-value as it historically has for white students, but for Black students, it's only about data. My freshmen loved The Raisin in the Sun and didn't care much for Persepolis, though I like it. I actually like Persepolis too. Adrian, I feel like Adrian Hubbard, excuse me, I feel like the craft part of teaching is mostly gone now. This is one reason I am retiring this year. I am sad about it. Also, IO Carbon again. Plus, with so many new teachers and high turnover in the district, they don't have time to fix someone else's curriculum. It should be great from the get-go. That's a great point. They don't have the luxury of that. More nuggets there. Molly, I'm sorry. Just to clarify, the comment about sustainability was from Ms. Catron. I'm sorry, Ms. Catron, I misquoted you. And IO Carbon. Lastly, we can't just say culturally relevant. I trained under an anthropologist, and culture is broad. Man, we need to have that on the show, talking about anthropology and what that whole thing is about. Okay, and culture, it is broad. It's racial, historic, geographical, religious, economic, physical, etc. My students love my class because it was racially relevant. They learned more about Black lit with me than they did with 3 other ELA teachers. and lots of love for Mr. Lawrence. Thank you so much, family. I wish I had a moment to rattle off all of your names who participated in the chat, added questions, and really mostly comments, and for your experiences. Thank you for watching. Thank you for sharing. To our esteemed guests, Ms. Peters, Ms. Carey, Mr. Tavon Lawrence, thank you all so much for spending your time with us. I know we are overdue. Folks, please tune in on Thursday where we expect our brother Tyrone back for Tyrone's House. Until then, be safe, stay safe, and join us then. Thank you all. Take good care.